A black veteran, a man who lost an arm on the battlefield fighting for America, just had his American flag seized right in front of his own house, by the very HOA of the neighborhood he lives in. And the reason wasn't the law, it was because they said a black man being patriotic looks ridiculous. They had no idea they had just awakened a storm. That night, the quiet suburb of Willow Creek sat under a soft yellow glow from the streetlights. On neatly trimmed lawns, shiny SUVs rested like they were asleep. In the distance, crickets chirped under the low hum of air conditioners behind beige-painted walls. Only one house at the end of Maple Lane still had its lights on. It was a gray house with a dark blue roof. At first glance, it looked no different from any other house on the block. But the closer you got, the more the differences showed. A wind chime made from spent brass casings hanging off the front porch, a few black and white photos by the window, soldiers in uniform, armored vehicles, dusty desert roads. Inside the living room, a black man in his mid-60s sat alone in an armchair. His left arm stopped halfway down his bicep, the rest was just empty space beneath a rolled-up shirt sleeve. His name was Robert Mitchell. On the coffee table in front of him lay a long box wrapped in dark blue velvet. He rested his right hand, tough and calloused from years of work, on the edge of the box. Inside was a folded American flag, triangle-shaped, the kind given at military funerals. The same flag he'd received when he came home from Iraq, at a ceremony honoring the ones who didn't make it back. Robert sat still, listening to nothing but the ticking of the wall clock. Every tick felt like a step backward in time. Heat blasted his face like an open oven door. Gunpowder. Metal. Sand baked so hard it smelled burnt. The thump 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 of helicopters overhead. Mitchell. Get down. Get down. In front of him was a dusty road outside Kandahar, Afghanistan. Back then, he was barely past 30, strong, 2 arms corded with muscle. Gunfire cracked through the air, grenades exploded, turning sky and dirt into chaos. Then there was another blast, closer, deeper. Everything went white, then shrill, a piercing ring. When he came to, his world only had one arm. The other was blood and bandages. He remembered one thing, the American flag patch on his combat sleeve, smeared with dust and blood. He stared at it as he faded out, thinking, at least I did something that mattered. At least this meant something. The ticking clock pulled him back to his living room. Robert took a slow breath, opened the velvet box, and lifted the folded flag like it was both sacred and heavy. Tomorrow was Independence Day, July 4th. And for the first time, he was going to raise this flag in front of his new home. Still awake, Grandpa? A young voice drifted down from the staircase. It was Marcus, Robert's 19-year-old grandson. He wore a college t-shirt and shorts, curls loose, eyes still heavy with sleep but curious as ever. Yeah. Robert smiled. Just thinking. Marcus walked over and looked at the flag in his hands. That's the one from Uncle Aaron's funeral, right? He asked quietly. Robert nodded. Yeah. His, and a few others. Every fold has a face. Marcus went silent for a moment. Everybody's gonna be flying flags tomorrow, Grandpa, he said. Why do you look so tense? Robert turned to the window. He saw white houses, perfect lawns, expensive cars. A picture-perfect community that lived by a strict set of rules drawn up by the Homeowners Association, HOA. Because, Marcus, he said slowly, in neighborhoods like this, there's usually only one kind of American people think looks right. He glanced down at the color of his own skin. And you're not that kind? Marcus asked. Robert gave a tired half-smile. We'll find out tomorrow. The sun rose early, spilling light over lawns already glistening from timed sprinklers. As daylight spread, Maple Lane turned red, white, and blue. Flags went up everywhere. On porches. On mailboxes. In flower beds. The whole street looked like a postcard for the 4th of July. Robert put on a white shirt and khakis, opened the velvet box, and carefully lifted the folded flag. He'd bought a white aluminum flagpole and planted it in the front yard, near the flower bed. Marcus stood behind him, phone in hand. "Let me record this, Grandpa," Marcus said. "First time you're flying this flag at the new place." "It's a big deal." Robert tilted his head like he might refuse, then nodded. "Go ahead." He attached the flag to the halyard and pulled slowly. Fold by fold, the flag unfurled, stars and stripes catching the morning light. It flapped gently in the breeze. For a moment, Robert's whole posture changed. His chest lifted. His eyes sharpened. Marcus didn't see an old man. He saw a soldier. "Looks good," Marcus grinned. "You still got it, old man." Robert flicked his fingers at his head. "I'm not dead yet." They didn't know that a pair of eyes was watching from a few houses down. At 204 Maple, Karen Whitfield, a blonde woman in her 50s with overstyled curls, stood behind her curtains, coffee mug in hand. Next to her, arms crossed, was her husband George. "See that?" Karen said, squinting. "This neighborhood already has enough flags. And the way he's putting it up, like he's putting on a show." George grunted. "Yeah. Look around. You see anybody else here who looks like him? This is Willow Creek, not the inner city." Karen pulled out her phone and opened the Willow Creek HOA board group chat. "Karen, don't we have rules about flags and where they can be displayed? 219 has a huge one out front. It looks off. Maybe we need to remind them before things get out of hand." Replies popped up fast. "Brian, HOA president, I'll handle it. I'll review the rules." Linda, agree. "We don't want this place looking messy. Especially from the new ones." The typing bubbles danced. Karen smirked and set her cup down. "Told you," she said to George. "First they bring in their difference, then one day this place doesn't look like us anymore." George sighed. "Just don't go crazy with this, okay? I just want peace and quiet." "Peace?" Karen said, eyes still locked on Robert's flag. "Peace doesn't come from staying quiet. It comes from control." That late afternoon, while the sun slid behind the houses, Robert heard something slip through the front door mail slot. Paper. Marcus picked it up and saw the Willow Creek Homeowners Association logo. "Letter from the HOA, Grandpa." Robert wiped his hands on a dish towel and opened it. Notice of violation. Property, 219, Maple Lane. Issue, unapproved exterior installation. Description, flagpole and flag installed in front yard without prior architectural approval. Action required, remove within 24 hours. Failure to comply will result in a fine of $250 per day. At the bottom was the signature, Brian Collins, President, Willow Creek HOA. Robert stared at the page, jaw tightening. "Let me guess," Marcus said. "It's about the flag, right?" "Flagpole," Robert corrected quietly. "Says it wasn't pre-approved." Marcus stepped outside and looked up and down the street. "Grandpa, every house on this block has a flag," he said. "Look there, 215 has one twice the size of ours. And 210's flying too, American and POW, MIA. I don't see any notices taped to their doors." Robert glanced in those directions. He'd noticed them too. "I'll go to the HOA office tomorrow," he said. "If it's just paperwork, I'll fix it." "You really think it's just paperwork?" Marcus shot back. "Or because our skin doesn't match the neighbors?" Robert turned, looking him straight in the eyes. "Listen to me, Marcus," he said, voice low. "I've met the kind of people who win the moment you lose your temper. We start with the law. If the law won't protect us, then we talk about fighting. But this isn't a battlefield, Grandpa," Marcus said. Robert gave him a thin smile. "Exactly. This is home. And to keep a home, you pick your battles carefully." The next morning, Robert put on a blue dress shirt, pinned his veteran's lapel pin to his chest, grabbed the letter, and headed to the HOA office by the community gate. The office was small but neatly decorated, with a front desk, leather chairs, and a big framed aerial shot of the entire subdivision. Behind the reception desk sat Linda, a woman in her 40s with thin frame glasses. "Good morning, sir. How can I help you?" she asked, giving him a professional smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "My name's Robert Mitchell. 219 Maple," he said. "I got this letter." He handed it over. Linda scanned it, then nodded. "Yes, this is a standard notice. In Willow Creek, all exterior decorations need prior approval. But American flags are allowed on national holidays, right?" Robert said. "I read your rules, Section 4, Clause 7. Linda blinked, surprised he'd actually read them. "Ah, yes, that's correct," she said. "But the flagpole itself must be submitted for architectural review. I bought the kind of pole that the manufacturer said was HOA approved in most communities," Robert said. "If it's just forms, I can bring schematics." At that moment, Brian Collins, the HOA president, stepped out of a back office. He was in his late 40s, tall, salt and pepper hair, blue shirt tucked into slacks, belt perfectly aligned. "What's going on, Linda?" Brian asked. "This is Mr. Mitchell, from 219, about the flagpole violation," Linda said. Brian took a long, slow look at Robert, from his shoes to his face, pausing briefly at the missing arm. "We've had some complaints," Brian said bluntly. "Your flagpole is a bit attention-grabbing. It breaks the visual uniformity of the street." "Breaks the what?" Robert raised an eyebrow. "Since when is an American flag breaking the look of an American neighborhood?" Brian shifted his weight, trying to keep his tone level. "You know what I mean, Mr. Mitchell," he said. "We just want to maintain a consistent aesthetic. All residents are held to the same standards." "The same?" Robert asked. "So the poles at 210, 215, 223, those all went through the process?" Brian clearly hadn't expected him to know the house numbers. "Those homes have been here for years," Brian said slowly. "Their installations were approved long ago. Their files are on record. You're new, so we have to follow procedure." "And that procedure is what?" Robert said. "Send a letter demanding I take down my flag in 24 hours with no conversation, no warning." Brian cleared his throat. "Mr. Mitchell, we don't want this to get tense," he said. "Just take the flag down, submit an approval request, and the board will review it. If it's approved, you can put it back up next time. Simple." "But today is the 4th, Robert replied. "I fly this flag to remember people who didn't come home. Next time means waiting another year." Linda cut in. "Honestly, sir, the HOA's already being pretty lenient by giving you 24 hours instead of fining you immediately." Robert glanced at the $2.50 per day line again. He smiled, but it was the kind of smile you see right before a storm. "All right," he said quietly. "I'll follow the rules. I'll go home and think very carefully about whether the flag I lost an arm protecting is appropriate for my own front yard." His voice wasn't loud, but every word was sharp as glass. Brian opened his mouth to say something, but Robert had already turned and walked out. Linda shrugged. "He's a little sensitive, don't you think?" she whispered. Brian watched Robert through the window. "In a place like this, we keep standards," Brian said. "If we let one person break the rules, everything falls apart." "By one person, you really mean his kind, right?" Linda asked quietly. Brian didn't answer. He just took a long sip of coffee, eyes still on Robert. That afternoon, Robert sat alone on the front porch, watching the flag sway from the pole. Marcus came out with 2 sodas and handed him one. "So, what did they say?" Marcus asked. "They said rules are rules," Robert replied. "But if you pay attention long enough, you notice rules bend easier for some people than others." "You gonna take it down?" Marcus asked, eyes fixed on the flag. Robert didn't answer right away. It wasn't an easy question. Taking it down meant accepting that they had the right to decide how American he was allowed to be. Leaving it up meant going to war with the system, and risking fines, threats, maybe even being forced to move. "Grandpa," Marcus said quietly, "if you need help with the fines, I can pick up extra shifts. I'd rather see you fight than watch you back down." Robert looked at him with a mix of pride and sadness. "War taught me something," he said. "Not every hill is worth dying on. Sometimes you live to fight another day. So this hill." Marcus looked at him, waiting. Robert still didn't answer. That night, the neighborhood lit up with the sounds of the 4th, fireworks cracking, music blaring, the smell of barbecue drifting through open windows. People laughed in backyards, kids ran around with sparklers. At Robert's house, things were quiet. He and Marcus ate a simple dinner and turned in early. Robert went to his room. Marcus stayed up scrolling through his phone, watching strangers in other cities film fireworks. Around 9, he heard something outside. Metal scraping. A dull clank. Something being dragged. Marcus frowned, set his phone down, and peered through the curtain. He could make out 2 figures in the yard by the flagpole. "Grandpa!" Marcus yelled. "Grandpa!" He burst into Robert's room. "They're out there," he gasped. "They're taking your flag down." Robert shot up faster than any 65-year-old should. He stormed down the hallway, yanked the front door open, and froze. Brian and George were standing in the middle of his lawn. The flagpole had been cut at the base and was leaning sideways. The flag drooped, half on the ground. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Robert roared. Brian jumped, then straightened. "Mr. Mitchell, you were given notice," he said. "The board voted to remove the non-compliant installation." "Remove?" Robert's voice shook with anger. "This is my property. You're destroying my property." George rolled his eyes. "Quit making a scene. We're just enforcing standards. People like you can't just." "People like me?" Robert stepped forward, locking eyes with him. "What exactly does that mean?" Marcus was already recording, phone up, camera rolling. "Grandpa, I got everything," he muttered. "Just stop," came Karen's voice. She strutted up with a flashlight in hand. "Everyone's tired of his little performance. A black man waving a giant flag around like he's trying to prove he loves this country more than everybody else. It's not a good look." "And that bothers you?" Robert asked. Karen shrugged. "There are things that don't fit the image of this neighborhood," she said. "The way you display that flag, the pole right in the middle of your yard. It's not what Willow Creek is about. This is not your personal stage." Brian jumped in. "Okay, enough," he said. "Mr. Mitchell, we're taking the pole back to the office. You can have your flag. Consider this resolved." Brian started dragging the pole toward the curb. The flag was still attached, dragging along the grass, picking up dirt. Robert felt like he'd been punched in the chest. He rushed forward and grabbed the pole. "Stop," he snapped. "Don't let that flag touch the ground." George laughed. "You care more about that piece of cloth than the rules," he sneered. Marcus zoomed in, capturing the flag scraping the dirt, Robert's panicked face, George's smirk. "Let go of the pole," Robert said, voice low and dangerous. Brian yanked it back. "No, Mr. Mitchell. This is now evidence." They struggled. In the chaos, Karen stepped up, grabbed the fabric, and yanked. The flag ripped with a loud tearing sound. That sound cut through Robert like a bullet. He froze. Karen held the torn piece of flag, grimacing. "Ugh. Now it's dirty," she said. And then she tossed the flag into the trash can by the driveway. Right in front of him. The air went dead silent. Robert stared at the trash can like it was a fresh grave. His right hand shook. Marcus shouted. "You just threw my uncle's funeral flag in the trash. Do you even know what that is?" "Oh my God," Karen scoffed. Don't start with your trauma speech. It's a piece of fabric. If it mattered that much, he shouldn't have put it out here like a billboard. Robert stepped to the trash can, jaw clenched. He reached in and gently pulled the flag out. It smelled like garbage, streaked with dirt, ripped near the middle. To you, it's just fabric, he said quietly. To me, it's what's left of people who died so you could stand here and judge them. Brian started to realize how bad this looked. Okay, we don't need to turn this into some melodrama, he said. We've removed the pole. You have your flag. Let's just consider this over. Over? Marcus snapped. You destroyed our property, humiliated my grandfather, disrespected dead soldiers, and you want to call it even? George nodded toward Marcus's phone. What are you gonna do, kid? Post it, he scoffed. Go ahead. See who the world believes, a black kid with a sob story and a one-armed old man, or the nice clean HOA board from a quiet community. Marcus stared at him for a second. You know what? You're right, he said. Let's see. He dropped the camera angle, flipped to selfie mode, and added one line. This is Willow Creek, where a black veteran's funeral flag was thrown into the trash by his own HOA. Then he hit stop. That night, Robert's house was so quiet he could hear the clock in the kitchen ticking from his bedroom. He sat at the table, the torn flag spread out in front of him. His fingers traced the rip in the fabric like it was a fresh scar. At the other end of the table, Marcus hunched over his laptop, screen glow lighting up his face. Grandpa, he said finally. I posted it. Robert looked up. Posted what? The video, Marcus said. I trimmed some of the swearing, but I left the part where they drag the flag, tear it, and toss it in the garbage. I wrote. My grandpa lost his arm in Kandahar fighting for this flag. Today his HOA threw it in a trash can in front of him. Robert exhaled slowly. You sure about this? He asked. Yeah, Marcus said. If we let this die quietly, they'll think they can do it again. Not just to you. To anyone. Robert knew he was right. War had taught him something else. Silence can be another way of surrendering. Okay, he said quietly. But get ready. When you shine a light on something filthy, it sprays back on you. Marcus gave a humorless chuckle. I grew up black in America, he said. I'm used to it. The next morning, Marcus woke to a storm of notifications. His phone buzzed non-stop. He squinted at the screen, then bolted upright. On Instagram, the views had already passed 312,000. In less than 10 hours. Comments flew by. This is disgusting. Is this a HOA or a racist committee? Marine vet here. I'd like to have a word with Willow Creek. White Army vet. Drop the address. I'm bringing a flag. He switched to TikTok. 1.2 million views. Marcus ran downstairs. Grandpa, he shouted. Grandpa. Robert was pouring coffee. The video, Marcus said, shoving the phone at him. It blew up. Robert saw the numbers, then read some comments. One profile picture showed a man in uniform. Name's Daniel Brooks, U.S. Army, retired. DM me the address. I'll bring a flag. Another. I'm a local reporter. I'd like to cover this. Marcus looked at him, eyes wide. See, he said. People are standing with us. Robert didn't answer right away. He looked out the window at the bare patch of lawn where his flagpole used to stand. Sometimes, he said, you only find out who's willing to stand with you when you've been pushed down where everyone can see it. Marcus's phone kept buzzing. Emails. DMs, requests from bloggers, activists, veterans groups. The story had stopped being just about a flag. It had become a question. Who gets to be American enough to fly one? Over at the HOA office, Brian Collins was living through the worst morning of his life. Have you seen the video? Karen nearly screamed into the phone. The whole internet thinks we're some kind of racist HOA from hell. I'm handling it, Brian insisted. Just breathe. Breathe? Karen snapped. They've dug up my old Facebook comments. People are messaging my kids' pages. They found photos of my house. You call this handling it? Brian rubbed his temples. We'll issue a statement, he said. We say it was a misunderstanding, that the flag was damaged and had to be discarded, that he consented. But the video shows everything. Karen cried. It shows me throwing it in the trash. That kid's caption has millions of views and people believe him. Because they need a hero and a villain, Brian said sharply. And in this story, we're the perfect villains. Linda walked into his office holding her phone. Brian, Fox 27 called, she said. They want an interview. No, Brian said quickly. We don't talk to the press until we have a statement ready. In this email? Linda held up her screen. From a veterans organization. They say they're coming to Willow Creek on Saturday to stand with Robert Mitchell. They say they'll be bringing flags. Brian's stomach dropped. Here, he repeated. Yeah. Linda swallowed. Here. Karen shrieked through the phone. If you don't stop them now, by Saturday this place is finished, she yelled. We'll be a hashtag forever. Brian looked out the window. The subdivision still looked calm, peaceful, at least on the surface. But he could feel the storm building over it. 2 days blurred by in a haze of interviews, reposts, reaction videos, and hashtags. YouTube channels with millions of subscribers dissected the clip titled HOA throws Black veterans flag in the trash. By Friday, the story had hit mainstream local news. Reporters called Willow Creek residents. People argued in Facebook comment sections. Families yelled at their TVs. Saturday morning, the storm arrived. The sky was clear. The air was mild. And starting early, cars with out-of-state plates showed up at the Willow Creek Gate, South Carolina, Virginia, Georgia. They parked along nearby streets and walked in. Men and women of all ages. Some stooped and slow, hair white. Some still strong, walking with purpose. Some with canes. Many wore caps and jackets embroidered with unit patches. They all had one thing in common, somewhere on their body, a hat, a patch, a pin, was an American flag. Maple Lane, usually quiet, suddenly filled with people. Residents peeked through blinds, cracked open doors. Some came out onto their lawns, unsure if they were watching a protest, a parade, or a reckoning. Karen didn't peek. She slammed her door and yanked the curtains shut, leaving only a thin slit to look through. Oh my God. Radicals, she muttered. They're going to turn this into a circus. George watched the crowd gathering. You called the cops? He asked. Yeah, Karen said. They said as long as it's peaceful, their hands are tied. If things get disorderly, they'll step in. George frowned. I don't like this at all. At 2:19, Marcus and Robert stood just inside the front yard, watching. Grandpa, Marcus said softly, I'm gonna record, okay? Robert nodded. He wore a clean blue shirt and khakis. His lapel displayed row after row of medals, including a Purple Heart. A middle-aged white man with a graying beard and a slight limp stepped forward. Are you Robert Mitchell? He asked. Yes, sir, Robert answered. I'm Daniel Brooks. United States Marine Corps, retired. He held out a calloused hand that trembled slightly. I saw your grandson's video. I've been mad about it for 3 days straight. Robert shook his hand, feeling the weight of years of service in the grip. Thank you, he said. For coming all this way. Daniel turned around. Behind him stood a crowd, veterans, families, neighbors, reporters, students, seniors. We're not here to start trouble, Daniel said, voice raised just enough to carry. We're here to tell you, in Willow Creek, that you're not alone. The crowd answered with cheers and applause. A reporter moved in with a mic. Mr. Mitchell, do you want to say anything about what happened to you and your flag? She asked. Robert drew a slow breath, looked past her into the camera lens. "I don't want to be a victim," he said. "I didn't post that video. My grandson did. I never thought that after everything I went through, after the friends I lost in Kandahar, Mosul, Fallujah, the flag I fought for would end up in a trash can in front of my own house. Not from an enemy. From my neighbors." Camera shutters clicked like distant gunfire. "But I do want to say this," he went on. "Patriotism isn't a membership card for white people or for black people. It's not skin deep. It's measured in what you're willing to give up for others." He stared straight into the lens. "And if a system thinks it gets to decide who's American enough to fly a flag, that system is broken." The crowd erupted in applause. Not far away, Brian and Linda stood in front of the HOA office, looking like they'd aged 10 years in 2 days. "We have to say something," Linda murmured. "The media's at the gate." Brian swallowed hard and tugged at his tie. "Okay," he said. "We'll say it was a misunderstanding. That we enforce rules equally. No racial bias. If anyone said something inappropriate, that's on them, not the HOA." "But," Linda said quietly, "the video is pretty clear. People like you." Karen's old comments. "It's not just one moment." "Then we put it on Karen," Brian snapped. "She overstepped. We were just following procedure." Linda looked at him, a flicker of disgust in her eyes. "You're gonna throw her under the bus?" she asked. Brian shrugged. In a media firestorm, the weak link breaks. Reporters swarmed as soon as they stepped outside. "Mr. Collins, do you admit the HOA acted in a discriminatory way? Did you single out 219 because they're the only black family on Maple Lane? Are there any other flag-related violations that resulted in forced removal?" Brian forced a strained smile. "We enforce the rules evenly for all residents," he said. "If certain comments were made by individuals, those are personal opinions, not official HOA policy." "You mean Karen Whitfield?" one reporter cut in. "She's on your board. We've seen screenshots where she calls black residents aesthetic threats to the neighborhood. That's not just personal, that's structural." Brian's face went pale. "We're currently reviewing her role on the board," he said. "We'll be holding a special session." "And what about throwing a funeral flag in the trash?" another reporter asked. "Do you deny that was deeply disrespectful to a veteran?" "The flag at that point was damaged and dirty," Brian stammered. "We simply disposed of it." "It's a military funeral flag," the reporter shot back. And she said, "It's just a piece of fabric." "Do you think that's appropriate language from someone representing your community?" Brian could feel sweat trickling down his back. He knew he was losing this battle. The next day, an urgent notice hit every resident's inbox. Special community meeting, discussing incident at 219 and HOA board responsibility. The clubhouse was packed. Residents who'd never bothered to attend anything before came now, not because they loved governance, but because they didn't want their neighborhood's name permanently attached to racist HOA on Google. Brian stood at the front, flanked by Linda, Karen, George, and the rest of the board. Robert sat in the second row, Marcus beside him. Behind them, Daniel and several vets filled a row of chairs. "Thank you all for coming," Brian began, voice unsteady. "As you know, these last few days have brought a lot of unwanted attention to Willow Creek. On one level, there have been misunderstandings. On another, this is an opportunity to reflect on how we treat one another." A white man in the back stood up. "I'm Jim, from 210, he said. "I've lived here 12 years. I want to say this before we let spin take over. I've had 2 flags in my yard, a U.S. flag and a POW MIA flag, for years. Not once have I gotten a violation notice." The room buzzed. "So why is it," Jim continued, "that a black veteran raises one flag and you jump on him in 24 hours? If that's not discrimination, it's at least bias." An Asian American woman stood. "I'm a single mom from down the next street," she said. "I moved here last year. They didn't give me trouble over a flag. They did, however, complain that my flowers were the wrong colors. Meanwhile, my white neighbor planted the exact same kind the next month and no one said a word. You call that aesthetic standards? I call it prejudice. Murmurs swept the room. Brian raised his hands. I understand emotions are running high, he said. But let's focus on solutions. Daniel cut in. Solutions start with accountability, he said. Who pulled the flag down? Who put it in the trash? Who said people like you? Every eye turned toward Karen. She shot to her feet, voice shrill. I did what needed to be done to keep this place from turning into a spectacle, she snapped. I don't have a problem with black people. I have black friends. But she jabbed a finger toward Robert, he's using his veteran status to play the victim. A loud, angry murmur rolled through the crowd. Victim? Marcus stood up, hands shaking. Did you lose an arm overseas? Do you wake up at night because you hear your friends screaming in your head? Have you ever held a folded flag and handed it to a family that just lost someone? My grandpa has. And you call that playing victim? Karen flushed red. You little. Brian pulled her down by the elbow. Linda spoke up, voice steady. We need to be honest, she said. As the office assistant, I've heard they end us a lot in this building. Not just from Karen. From residents. And we brushed it off as just how people talk. But those attitudes led directly to what happened that night. The room went silent. Brian stared at her like he couldn't believe she'd said it. I don't want to keep being part of a system that protects one group's comfort by stepping on everyone else, Linda went on. If that had been Jim's flag at 210, we all know this would have gone differently. An older resident raised his hand. So what now? He asked. Do we let the internet tear us apart, or do we show the world that Willow Creek knows how to admit it's wrong? Another voice chimed in. I move that we vote to remove the current HOA board and elect a new one. And we draft a formal written apology from the community to Mr. Mitchell. Scattered claps turned into a wave of applause. Brian's face drained of color. Hold on, you can't just... Actually, we can, Jim said. The bylaws say we can call for a vote of no confidence in the HOA board with a 2/3 majority. Right? Linda checked the printed bylaws in front of her, then looked up. That's correct, she said. We can. Marcus looked around. Hands were already going up. All right, Daniel said. Everyone in favor of saying what happened to 219 was unacceptable and voting to remove this HOA board, raise your hand. More than 70% of the room shot their hands into the air. Karen screamed. You can't do this. I've lived here since this place was built. Nobody cared. The applause drowned her out. Brian looked around the room, saw nothing but anger and disappointment. He set the microphone down. He said quietly. I resign. Karen stared at him, stunned. What are you doing? What I should have done from the beginning, Brian said. Listening instead of dictating. And I failed. A week later, Willow Creek wasn't trending anymore. The internet had moved on to new outrage. But inside that subdivision, something had shifted. In the front yard of 219, a new flagpole stood planted firmly in the ground. Robert didn't raise it alone. Jim, Daniel, a few vets, and Linda, who had quit her job at the HOA office, were all there helping. This one's a lot sturdier than the last, Jim said, patting the base. Anybody tries to mess with it, they'll have to go through a whole squad of cranky old vets. Everybody laughed. Robert held a new flag in his hands, a replacement sent by a veterans organization with a note, for the flag that was disrespected. This one comes with our respect. He looked at it for a moment, then turned to Marcus. You want to do it? He asked. Me? Marcus blinked. For real? It's time your generation holds on to what mine bled for, Robert said with a small smile. Marcus stepped up, took the halyard in his hands, and began raising the flag. It unfurled in the breeze, cloth snapping softly, catching the sunlight. Neighbors stood around. Some put their hands over their hearts. Some just watched in silence. Robert lifted his one good hand in a salute. In that moment, no one said the words black or white. For a few seconds, there wasn't race, HOA politics, or viral outrage. There was just an old soldier, a young man, and a community trying, awkwardly, imperfectly, to make things right. Marcus glanced sideways. "Grandpa," he asked quietly, "does this still feel like a battlefield to you?" Robert chuckled softly. "No," he said. "Battlefields don't give you a chance to fix anything. Just winners, losers, and bodies. Here, at least, people get a chance to learn." Marcus thought for a second. "You regret letting me post that video?" he asked. Robert watched the flag billow overhead. "If you hadn't posted it," he said, "this pole would still be empty. Not because they banned it, but because I would have convinced myself to let it go. To pick peace and quiet over the truth." He turned and looked his grandson in the eye. "Don't ever let anybody tell you you're not allowed to love this country because you don't look like them. You hear me?" Marcus nodded hard. "Yes, sir. I promise." Over the next few weeks, life in Willow Creek slowly settled. But now, at community meetings, people actually said the word racism without flinching. They listened when minority residents spoke. New families moved in, a Latino family, an Asian family. Nobody complained about their flower colors, their curtains, or the cars in their driveway. One afternoon, Marcus sat at his laptop and replayed the old video. The views had plateaued in the low millions, but comments still trickled in. One of the newest ones made him pause. "I'm the son of a white veteran. My dad always said the worst part of war was coming home and finding out people wanted to pick who was American enough. Thank you for sharing your story. I hope one day this country understands that patriotism has no color." Marcus smiled, closed the laptop, and stepped outside. Robert was on the porch, eyes closed, head tilted back, his hand resting gently on his chest. "You sleeping?" Marcus asked. "No," Robert said, opening his eyes. "Just listening." "To what?" Marcus asked. "The flag," Robert said. "Wind in the fabric. It's been a long time since I heard that sound from my own front yard." Marcus sat down beside him. The breeze brushed across their faces, carrying the soft flapping of the flag overhead. Somewhere far above, if you believed in that kind of thing, maybe those who hadn't made it back from Kandahar, Mosul, and all the other places were looking down. They didn't see HOA meeting minutes or property codes. They didn't see walls and fences and standards. They saw one of their own finally stop swallowing his anger, and a community, late, clumsy, incomplete, learning how to say, "We were wrong." "Patriotism has no color," Robert said quietly, almost to himself. "But injustice always does. Our job is to name it so the next generation doesn't have to pay the same price." Marcus studied his grandfather's face, lined, scarred, tired, but peaceful in a way he hadn't seen before. "You think," Marcus asked, "that someday people will stop caring what color you are?" Robert's gaze drifted up to the flag, rippling against the blue sky. "I don't know," he said. "But I know this. As long as there are people willing to record, to speak, to stand up, injustice won't get to hide in the dark." The wind picked up. The red, white, and blue danced. And this time, nobody dared lay a hand on it.